Welcome to the Purpose Chasers podcast, where adversity meets ambition and setbacks become setups for something greater. I'm your host, Mark Crandall. After walking away from a $5.1 million construction sale, enduring loss, betrayal, a season of darkness, and a pile of financial devastation, I came back to the one thing I can't shake, helping people live on purpose. This podcast isn't about chasing dollars, it's about chasing calling. Every week, we shine light on creators, entrepreneurs, and artists who refuse to quit. People who kept moving forward when life told them to sit down. If you've ever been knocked down, counted out, or told no, you're in the right place. Because here, we turn pain into power and purpose into impact. Let's dive into this week's episode.
Heart-centered hustlers, welcome back. Very, very excited for my guest today. And I want to start by sharing a story about how I came to this man's work. So at the time, I was doing substance abuse interventions. I was also building sales funnels. I was speaking. I was doing one-on-one coaching. I was doing some consulting. I had courses that I was selling. I was doing sales for a mastermind, and my son was born. As my son was born, I had this book in my Audible account titled Essentialism. And I remember I was going to get some food in the hospital after little man had been born. My phone is blowing up with all these different things that I have. And I was tired from being up all night with my wife and my new son, and I hit play on Audible. And the words that came out of this book just struck me. And I remember sitting there at the hospital table and I started crying. And I was like, I did not become an entrepreneur. I started to think about why I became an entrepreneur and why I set out on this journey. And the original intention was to have 3-day weekends without seeking permission. But yet I was finding myself working 10 hours on Friday, working all day on Saturday, all day on Sunday, and I lost myself. And I listened to this book, and it just blew my life apart. And I'm still detoxifying some of this stuff that I built. I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast. I have Greg McKeown on. Oh shit, did I lose it? Hang on one second.
That's all right. By the way, is the video being used?
Yes. Is that okay?
I just wanted to know because I was eating.
Oh, no, you're fine. Okay, and it came back. Is my signal good?
Sounds fine to me.
Okay. And I have Greg McKeown on the podcast today, and I am very, very excited. I had to go through email communication with this man's team for about 6 months to get Greg on. I'm very, very grateful. You live in another part of the world, in another time zone. I have never done a Friday podcast interview, but here you are. Thank you so much for your time, Greg.
It's such a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
At what point in your life did you start to evaluate your time management to get to what you're teaching today? Which I've watched a ton of your videos on essentialism and the art of simplifying your life and doing less to create more.
Well, one of the experiences that was formative was when I got, not so dissimilar from the story that you just began. When I was, I got an email from my boss at the time, said, look, Friday between 1 and 2 p.m. would be a very bad time for your wife to have a baby because I need you to be at this client meeting. And I'm sure they were joking, but I still felt the pressure to be there. And so Thursday night, our daughter's born in the early hours of Friday morning. And so then here we are in the hospital, and I'm feeling torn. Is it possible that I can do both? And I'm trying to straddle it, really. And then to my shame, I went to the meeting, and I remember afterwards, the boss said, well, look, I think the client will respect you for the choice that you just made. And I'm not sure that the look on their faces evinced that sort of confidence, but even if they had, it's clear I made a fool's bargain, violated something more important for something far less important. And what I learned from that was, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And this coalesced a journey that I had been on already, but it helped to define that this was something worth studying. I hypothesized that I wasn't the only person that would be, struggling with this. And indeed, I found, that many people feel stretched too thin at work and at home. They feel busy but not productive. They feel their life, their day is being hijacked by other people's agenda for them. And, if they want a way out, there is a way out. And the way out is the way of the essentialist.
And I remember hearing you say that if you don't prioritize your life, somebody else will. And I ripped through this audiobook. I've actually gone through that Audible book about 5 times now.
Wow.
And I remember I finished it in the hospital, and I came home with my son, and I was just obsessively talking. It was kind of, I don't want it to sound creepy, but obsessively talking about you. Right. And it was like, just going to people and saying, you have to check out this book. You have to get your hands on it. Cause of course, when you're in a place of allowing other people to prioritize your life, my experience is I was surrounding myself with other people that were allowing other people to prioritize their lives. So here we are, right, this scattered pack of chaos, and we're working Sunday, and we're talking about hustle, and we're neglecting our families, and just, and it struck me so hard. And I realized that a majority of the things that I was saying yes to, I really, if I had sat and thought about them, which is something that you teach in your work, they just didn't make sense for for the ultimate plan.
Well, and this is, it's a powerful story, right? For me to hear you talk about being in the hospital there with your family, and that you start to cry, that's a poignant moment. It's a powerful moment for me, because books, of course, are not entirely dead things. There's a life to them, but they don't start breathing and living unless the reader comes and gives the other half of the life, so to speak. And so, some principle I like and have experienced in my own life is that when the student is ready, when I'm ready, the teacher arrives. And so it really is on us to be in a moment, to be teachable, to be ready. And you were. And so, essentialism found you because you were ready, because you were, willing to look at your life in that moment and say, all right, this isn't what I meant to choose, but I've ended up choosing a strategy I didn't mean to pursue.
And it absolutely. So I put this buffer in place for me, and I'm curious what tactics you apply, and for you to share with the listeners the tactics that you've implemented into your own life to protect your time. And I've put a strategy in place that before I make any decision that's going to take some of my time outside of my family, I sit with it for 48 hours. Now, obviously, there are day-to-day business decisions that need to get made on the spot, right? But when it comes to taking on another project, or taking on a consulting client, or bring in a new client in a new direction in the digital marketing company, it's like, okay, let's sit on this and let's discuss this 2 days from now, after we've really decided, does this align with the direction that we're going? Because as an entrepreneur with this creative mind, it's kind of this phrase of just because you can build doesn't mean you should, right? It's like, and then I get crazy and I want to get it done. And the next thing you know, I'm coming upstairs and my wife's like, hey, remember me?
Yeah, that's right. And those relationships, they won't last forever unless we treat them as essential as they are. And what we sometimes make a mistake about is we just take it for granted. Well, like the family will be here, they'll understand, they'll get it. But that logic means that we make the wrong trade-off, micro trade-off sometimes, just a small trade-off, wrong every time. One of the things that I've started doing recently, after I heard, it's a funny story actually. There's the fellow in England is Ben Bergman, something like that, and he's like, he basically trains the fittest people in the world. He like trains all these cross trainers in their, whatever the World Olympics, whatever they championship they call it. And one of the things that he is said to do is that at 5 o'clock each night, no matter what meeting he's in, like 5 to 5, 10 to 5, he'll like stand up and he'll keep talking to somebody as he's packing up his computer, as he's walking to the door. And then it's like, finally it's just like, yeah, okay, well, I'm going to go. Like, he will leave at 5 o'clock. It's like the thing. And after I heard that, see, the reason I think it's funny is because I think one of the reasons he does that is because he read Essentialism. But I don't even know for sure that he does it. I don't know. I've just heard this story and now I'm doing it because I heard that he did it. And it's just a funny little loop. I'm going to be chatting with him sometime on the podcast, on my podcast. It's about to come out in June. But anyway, the thing is that now at 5 o'clock, I leave the office no matter what. And one of my accountability points is that I announce the time loud to the whole family when I arrive. So if I get out at 5:01, I will yell 5:01. If I the latest I've been since I've been doing it, I think was 5:23. And I just didn't, and I didn't like having to announce 5:23. I wanted to be able to be out there at 5 o'clock and to be there. And it's nice to have that excuse to stop rather than just, okay, it goes on and on and on. And then eventually it's 6:30, it's 7. Why stop at any point unless you have a boundary? You don't establish one, there won't be any.
So when you say you announce, is that from an accountability standpoint? So you literally stand in the kitchen in front of your wife and your children and say, 5:23. Oh,
that's what I do.
Oh,
wow. That's literally what I'm doing right now. I'm experimenting with it and I really like it because for a start, I've been pretty consistent at being out there at 5:01, 5:02, 5:03. And I want them to know that too. Because if I'm doing it, then I want to be known, together, that I'm keeping to that number and of course it helps. I mean, there's obviously doing what you say you're going to do or being consistent or being disciplined, but also just practically, if you've done it 5, I mean, obviously all of us right now at time of recording are still, at least here, quarantined still. So the moment work is over, you are home. There's no travel, there's driving, there's none of that. So it helps to be walking through the door, so to speak, at 5 o'clock, because what that means is that dinner's easier. You're starting dinner earlier. If dinner needs to be prepared still, I can help with that. If, whatever needs to be done, I can be there. And the difference between 5, or at least with our family, the difference between 5 or 6 or 6:30 or 7 is a huge difference. Really, it's the whole evening that's going to be different. If we do it at 5, then we can finish dinner, clean up everything. We have a whole system for that. That's quite fun. For how we clean up and how we do that whole thing. But there's a set of rituals that are enriching and are good. And so it means that we're done earlier. We can go on a walk. It means that we can be done from that. Go, watch a show together. It means that we can be finishing up with that show and getting people into their get ready for bed nighttime ritual. And so everything works better if I keep to my boundary and don't let work just consume, nibble away at more and more time in the evening.
And I can imagine, let's just call a spade a spade. You've been doing this longer than I have. You're further down the path with much more stature, and you've created the traction in your business. And what I've found myself, just acknowledging the fact that you're further than I, right, is the further I get, the more opportunities are present, the more money, prosperity, fame, all the things that come with the work that we do. it gets grander, and it's easy to kind of put a cloak or a blindfold on and be like, oh, but this is so. How do you navigate that? I mean, you talked about, I know that you're working on another book, because I've, discussed with your team about how, can Greg do it at this time because he's working on his book and he's in his quiet time. And like, yeah, I mean, you tell me when he can get on and I'm going to make that happen. And then you're launching a podcast in June, which I also want to talk about. So like, as you're rolling out these things, is it the accountability aspect that keeps you there, or like, what do you use currently to vet opportunities that come to you?
Well, first of all, you just assume that you're only going to do things if they meet a primary criteria in my life, right? Like there's lots of criteria you can use, and I outline some of those in the book. And one of the things I use is like use extreme criteria. Is this the best use of me? Is this something I'm truly passionate about? Is this something I could really become great at in the world? I mean, these are all questions that could be used. For me, there's maybe one more, and for me, it's the most important criteria, and that is this what my conscience dictates I should do? Is this right? The right thing to do? And that for me is a spiritual thing, where you're really tapping in with, the voice that I think all of us recognize actually, and all of us have felt. But sometimes we're not listening very well. It's like we're always attuned to it, but there's loads of other noise going on. It's like a quiet radio. It's always on, but if you have enough other loud music going on, enough other distractions, you might not listen to it. You might not be able to hear it. And so for me, I have a series of practices to protect and to amplify that voice. And so for me, that's the most important single thing that I do. And so that means when I get up, the first thing I'm doing is reading wisdom literature, right? Or scripture. I'm trying to make sure that I am attuned, that I'm meditating and praying first. No matter what else, to have that check-in, and then a variety of other check-ins through the day to achieve the same goal is like, if I took all of the practices that I use and ranked them, this would be a clear winner, more important by a factor, than anything else. So everything else I'm trying to do is to prioritize that highest priority. The highest priority is to protect our ability to prioritize everything else. So doesn't have the sort of structural answer as something else, or schedule 2 hours on your calendar and so on, that feels more tangible, but it's the most important thing for me. And I think it's where people need to be if they want to really live, not just, hey, I'm going to prioritize my to-do list today, but I'm going to do the things today that will help me to discover and then complete my mission in life.
And for some reason, I knew that you had spiritual practices, but I haven't actually witnessed hearing you talk about your faith and your spiritual connection. I was wondering, and I find, and I'm curious if for myself, at times, if I get off my practices and I start to get out of alignment with those practices, I find my life becomes more cluttered. To me,
it will happen. It can happen within a single day. And certainly within 2 days. Not that suddenly, at least for me, it's not like my life is suddenly crazy. No, I mean, there's all sorts of benefits to subscribing to this, spiritual strategy over weeks, months, and years. Is that they build upon each other as any strategy does. It affects, if you take it over 20 years, okay, it affects who I married and the type of person I married and what their practices are, what Anna's are, and her commitment to this same idea. And then you're teaching your children. And so there's many, many practices that are all integrated and coherent in helping to protect this navigational intelligence. So it means that if I were to be weak on today, there's a lot of other things around it that help to make sure I could get back quite quickly. But even with that, I still notice a difference if I just skip those practices in the morning and do them at night. It's still a different day. And so my idea is in the morning is after I've done the practices I've already talked about, is then to sit down and plan. That's when but I want to do it in that order. I don't just want to put a list of things out. I want to get the practice right, because things will come to my mind in those early minutes of the day. And often I will feel like the most important thing I could do changes in those first few minutes of evaluation, of those first few minutes of connection. And sometimes it really surprises me what the answer is. But it's never been wrong. I mean, I've never, ever in my life had one of those little prompts and done it and then gone, oh my goodness, why did I do that? What a waste of time that was. It just proves itself out. And then over time, I mean, it's definitely crescendos. It's compounding, right? We're talking about like compounding navigational intelligence or something. It's like over time, it really becomes a great and helpful asset. And so it's not so much that each day I'm just going, okay, I got X number of requests on my time. Which should I do? Going through the list, ranking them. It's the whole direction of my life is being influenced by this, this priority practice first thing in the morning. The whole direction you're going in, everything we're doing, where I am in my life, what I'm trying to do in my career, what I'm saying yes to, these are all growing out of this daily practice.
I mean, I could rabbit hole and talk about that all day. I mean, my whole life, existence, success in business, everything that I've experienced comes from that practice and staying consistent to it, and the amazing thoughts that I've had, that even business ideas that have come from like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe I didn't think of that. So what is it that you have said yes to? Because I know, like I said, I know that you're working on a new book, which I can't wait to get my hands on. And if there's anything that me or the Heart-Centered Hustlers community can do, everyone inside of the Purpose Chasers community has heard about Essentialism. They're probably sick of hearing about it because
sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry about it to them, but it had such a profound impact in my life and the success of my business, when in a time I thought the more that I did, the more that I would make and the more my family would prosper. It made no sense to me to think that the less that I did and the more focused I was on those things, the more my family would prosper on both levels. So what is it that you're up to? What are you working on? I want to know what you are saying yes to right now.
Well, let me answer that question, but let me answer it with one of the world's simplest ideas, but I think really profound. And it's this. Well, let me give it context. I went to a 2-week training with World Economic Forum at Harvard. They had this 2-week executive program. Really amazing people in the room. 2 weeks talking about a whole variety of challenges, global challenges, and how leaders could be expected to respond to them. And this was right as I had finished writing Essentialism. In fact, the book was just about to come out. And so my mind is very much in the essentialist mindset, but it's too late to have included any of the insight from that in the book. And as I'm sitting there and I'm listening to these amazing speakers and professors and discussions, something starts to dawn on me. And it's just like, I think we might have it completely backwards. That was like the idea. And finally, this grew into a kind of a comment. And I was really hesitant to give the comment because I thought, I'm probably going to be seen as a bit naive. And just how the only person who might, probably thinks this. What I said basically was, I think we've spent like the whole 2 weeks talking about all the problems out there. But I wonder if we prioritized helping families to be able to be happy and whole at home, where we might not solve most of the problems that we've just spent 2 weeks talking about out there. And to my total surprise, the entire room, instant applause. And I was so surprised by that. And I'm still surprised by it when I think about it, because the whole 2 weeks, no one had said anything like that. And yet, as I talked to people afterwards, it was the majority of the room felt that. And I think that might be true for people, maybe it's a majority of people everywhere have that same sensation. If they hear it, they go, yeah, that seems true. So from that, I constructed what I call just priority circle. And it's 3 circles. The outer circle, the third circle, is other. It's everything else. It's all the other stuff. It could be any number of projects, any number of requests in the community, in the world, things that are of interest. It's social media, it's news, it's just stuff. It's all the stuff and curious things. You're curious about everything. That's in the third circle. And the second circle is family. And then the first circle is protecting the asset. And my observation is that non-essentialists, meaning like most of us, start at the out of that circle. That's where they invest first. Other. Whatever's left over from that, which is often not very much, that we are willing to invest in family. So then whatever's left after we've done whatever family investment we've scrimped up is what remains for protecting the asset. Asset being us and our mental, emotional, physical, spiritual strengths, capacities. So how that looks is that somebody spends all day kind of reacting. They get home, they're exhausted. They sort of pretend to connect with the people that they know they love the most and care the most about, but really aren't invested in. By midnight, it's a true story. Somebody says at midnight, I should be going to sleep. I'm already exhausted, but I spend the next 2 hours on Zillow just looking at all these properties and thinking about which ones I could buy. And I have no time to buy them, but I just waste all this time hoping to try to get some, mental health and buffer for my day. That's the default place. The essentialist is the one single thing fix. They just do it in the other order. And that's it. They just start with protect the asset. Then because they've protected the asset, they're able to show up with their family in a whole way, a healthy way. They're able to be present. They're able to contribute in the right way. And because they're investing in their family relationships, they're also able to then show up in the other in a more discerning, more positive, more confident way. So you show up professionally better when you know, hey, look, my family's in good shape and my relationships are strong. And so that's it. That's the simple idea. But I just wanted to lay that all out because if you get the priority circle right, many, many of the non-essential problems or just problems that you're dealing with start to resolve themselves. And if you get the order wrong, you will never get there. If you start with the other, there'll be an endless supply of stuff, and you'll never get to fully invest with your family, and you'll never get to invest in your asset so that your capability, discernment capability never increases. And so you will just be perpetually, how did somebody just said this to me the other day? I don't even know if I like the term, but it's interesting. The best you can hope for is to be the smartest rat in the room.
Mm. Yeah. And in my experience with what you just said is this delusion starts to creep in that you're getting to the place you're going to arrive at the place that you're trying to get to. So if it's, I want to spend more time, quality time with my family, this delusion comes in that if I'm doing these things and I'm chasing these properties on Zillow, that if I just got this property and I just did this thing, then I would be able to spend more time with my family. But it just seemed, that moment in the hospital, and when you were, the book was reading in my ears and it's all hitting me, and somebody else is prioritizing my time, and all these things are hitting me, and it just struck me. And it's like, it's never going to happen.
Right.
It's never going to happen.
You can't get there if you get the priority circle order wrong. You can't get there. You won't get there. And that's because there is no end. It's an infinite circle, that outer circle. So you can never, and it's not just that it can never end in the sense that there's so many people, so many causes, so many issues, so many opportunities, so many emails, so many, all of that. That's true too, but it's also true because you can't fix the problems that way. So that's like a heady thought. Maybe it feels out there even, but the problems you're trying to solve, the things you're trying to address cannot be solved there. You've got to help people one by one to your sphere of influence, help them to start prioritizing, protecting their asset first. Then focus on developing their families and making sure their relationships are strong and good. Then moving on the other. If you could get the whole, like, let's just say we could wave the magic wand and suddenly we do that. Everybody suddenly was just protecting the asset, by which I mean some pretty basic things, actually. I mean, physically, I mean sufficient sleep, exercising, nothing extreme, just exercising every day, moving, going on a walk, 20 minutes, half an hour of something, tennis, whatever your thing of choice is, drinking water. I mean, I'm talking about things that we've probably all heard of, but the basic thing is developing the habits, making that stuff easy so that we can do it. Same kinds of spiritual practices we've talked about. Reading, making on the intellectual side that we're actually reading and writing every day. Just reading books, I'll be clear, reading good books every day, and writing, I think, in a journal, if nothing else. These practices, if everybody in the world was just instantly doing that, think of how many problems would immediately be solved. Think of the mental health issues that would be, I don't mean eradicated, because mental health is obviously, it's complex and so on, but no matter what anybody's current mental health state is, it would take a standard deviation better. So you would see some people who are spiking right now would suddenly not be spiking. It would be more manageable for them. And this can start a very positive process. So if somebody is Anna, just yesterday, my wife Anna, she spent a good couple of hours doing protecting the asset work. She was writing a long time in her journal. She was processing and connecting. And by the time she was done, by the time I saw her, she was just full of light. And I could see that she was just centered and calm and clear. And she had understanding that was helpful to her and helpful to us. And I thought, man, think of all of the positive ramifications for her and then for our family based upon that time. Think of all of the things you don't have to deal with if she or I were coming into the day frazzled and frustrated. So, get the order right, and a lot of these problems just slip out of your life altogether. And this starts to then become why the way of the essentialist is a joyful life, a good life, not a something you're forcing and saying no to everything all the time. No, it's something different to that.
It's very, very different, to the point where, I'm just thinking of a recent experience that I had this week. So I go upstairs around noon every day. And with the quarantine, little man's been home, my son, Mark, and I would go up there and he would, daddy, daddy, daddy. And he would run over to the baby gate and he would try to climb on it. And, early on in this practice, I would be like, hey, I love you. And I would go make my food and then I would come back downstairs. Now I've put time in my calendar that I pick him up. I love on him. I put him on my shoulders and we go do a 15-minute walk outside. So now when I go upstairs, he knows, yes. You know what I mean? It's not the same look on his face. It's crazy. And I don't have any of the monkeys in my head throwing bananas like, hey, you forgot to do that thing. You need to do that thing. Like, no. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I used to get anxiety if I had too many emails in my inbox. Now it's to the point where like, that's not going to go away. And if it does, it wasn't meant to be. My inbox will be there on Monday. And it's just, I'm very, very excited for the thought. I'm going to really toot your horn right here. I think you are one of the leading thought leaders of this time. I really do. I think with all the busy work that's being dropped on the world and all the hustle and all the stuff, I believe that the way of the essentialism with what is going on in the world, where everyone is called to this place of internal silence and people are doing everything that they can to still get outside of themselves. I believe that your work is going to be louder than it's ever been. Not that it's, not out there in the world now, but I just wanted to acknowledge you and state that I've studied, I've a degree to practice therapy. So I've studied some of the greatest thought leaders, of centuries before. And I think that your work is up there with some of the best. And it's also some of the simplest, most complex theories and thoughts. And I say that to piggyback onto this. I'm very excited to know. And I tried to poke a little bit to find out what you were working on from your team. And I couldn't get it. So are you open to sharing about it and sharing about the podcast launch, or are you keeping it under wraps for now?
No, I'm happy to talk about the podcast. The podcast is going to be called, I polled people on social media and the essentialist community, and got lots of good suggestions. And eventually, as I winnowed it down, it just seemed like, essentialism is still the right name. It's like what we know. It's the message I want to lead with. So the podcast is just Essentialism with Greg McKeown, and it will come out in June. It's going to have a series of conversations, and I'm really, really enjoying the conversations I'm having with people that often I didn't know them before. I knew of them, but like for example, I just interviewed this week Rachel Hollis, and so I knew of her books, I knew of her work, but it was just great I'd been on her podcast a couple of weeks ago, and then she was on mine, and it was just great to be able to go deep and just have a real conversation. I haven't approached any of these with like a set of, here are my questions going in, let's write. That's just not what I've done. And I just want to have a conversation about what matters to them. Why does it matter to them? What can we do in our lives to make sure that we're feeling more empowered and inspired to do the same, that we can design our lives around what matters. So it's just conversations with really interesting people. Tim Ferriss, I just interviewed Tim Ferriss, Arianna Huffington, and tons more. I'm like doing almost one a day right now, which I don't think I really need to be, but I'm enjoying it so much. And here's what's great. One of the questions I asked the essentialist community was, I polled them. I said, okay, who do you want me to interview? And I got some great answers and reached out to some people because of their recommendations. But the answer that got the most likes was was to interview my wife, Anna. Like, I didn't even put that out there. I didn't give it like a set of options. People were asking for it, and those were the ones that got the answers. And I loved that, because that is who I'd already been saying to the production company I'm doing this with. It has to be Anna. Anna needs to be the first person, because you can't have the first conversation again. And I always want the essential person in my life, my priority person, to be the first interview. And so we did that. And I was just re-listening to it. And what was so great for me about this, and I think other people can relate to this, I'm sure, is that I need it. I needed it. I wasn't listening to it like, oh, how was my voice sounding like? How's it, Anna sounding? That wasn't how I listened to it. I just was listening to it like I'm me listening to a podcast. And I thought, my goodness, I need to have an energized reminder, a pull me back to what's essential every week. And so that, it will drop every Monday. And I could really feel in that moment how, I think this is going to meet a need in the world, because I feel it too. And I feel like if I feel it and I wrote it and I'm talking about this subject, basically every day of my life, I really think there's a lot of people who, even if they are aspiring essentialists, even if they read the book multiple times, will quickly get off track, and they'll need to come back on track. So the conversations and the podcast, they're not going to be, okay, here are the 5 things you need to do this week on being an essentialist. It's not going to be like that at all. But I think for anybody listening who just wants to be gently brought back into this big conversation, what really matters? What is essential? What's our purpose? What should we be going after? These themes will be there like golden threads running through these conversations. And I'm cautiously optimistic that it can make a real difference.
Greg, I want to thank you so much for your time in this interview and the work that you've done in the world, the impact that you've had on not only myself, but my family. In wrapping up our time together, what message would you leave with the heart-centered hustle community on how to prioritize their life? If they could do one tangible thing today, if they could take one action to simplify their life and move the needle, what direction could you give them?
Well, Tim asked me when he interviewed me for his podcast, he said at the end, what's the one word you'd put on the billboard? That's one of the questions he asks almost all of his guests. And I hadn't prepared an answer for that, but in the moment, I thought the word is light. Just one word, light. And then your question was tangible, so that is probably insufficiently tangible. But what I think it is start. If you literally have to take essentialism down to like the cutting edge of execution, if you have to say, what does the most important practice look like? It is this. It is to pause this moment. You can do this in 10 seconds. You pause, you close your eyes. People listening to this, if they're not driving, whatever, they can do it right now. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Get into this moment. And ask, what's important now? What's essential now? In another way to say maybe a similar thing, is this essential? And that's it. That's the practice. Something comes. Take the action. Do what comes. What matters, what happens next matters most. So you can describe essentialism and life more generally in a million ways. You can think about it in all sorts of angles. But in the end, you only get the next moment and a choice in this moment. And I would encourage people to experiment with what I just described. Just take the action, do that next thing. Because really, it's an asymmetric experiment anyway, right? It's asymmetric reward, meaning there's very very low risk, limited downside for you to do that exercise, that practice, and to follow the whatever little prompting of a little nudge that you get, and potentially unlimited upside, because that voice of conscience, that navigational nudge, in my experience, is game changing. It is additive and grows together and eventually takes you on a completely different adventure than you expected. Frodo-like. Out of the Shire and on to doing something that only Frodo could do it. That's the whole point. It's an amazing story, right? There was one seemingly insignificant character. Only he can carry that ring. No one else can do it or may do it. Has to be him. And of course, I think this is why we love the story, because we feel insignificant. We feel like we don't matter. Oh, how can one person make a difference? We are Frodo. Of course, that's how we feel. But we, each of us, have a unique ring, an essential mission, an essential path to live. And I think we always have enough time to complete that mission if we focus on it. But if we get dragged into other things, then I'm not so sure. But there's always enough time to do what's most essential.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. In wrapping this conversation up, you touched on something that I just want to highlight, which is the reason why I started podcasting over 2 years ago. And that is, I got to bring it back to Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people. Like in the slogan of Heart-Centered Hustlers, right? The catchphrase is, it's not the money that we make that defines us. It's the relationships that we build and how we make the money that defines us. And I really think that speaks to the fun that you're having in the Essentialism podcast releasing. It's like you see so many people, and I've met so many individuals through podcasting that have become very close friends of mine. And we feed each other, right? It becomes this environment in which we feed each other. So I want to ask you this, which is the closing question that I've been asking all guests on this podcast. What can I or the Heart-Centered Hustlers community do for you to move your work forward?
Oh, I love that, because I wanted to respond to what you were saying anyway, and then you went to a question. I was like, oh, but this is my answer. The answer's both. I want you, all of your tribe, subscribe to the podcast. It's on all platforms, wherever you get podcasts. And find yourself at least one design partner. And maybe it could be your whole team. If someone's in a natural team, do the whole team, because essentialism is a collective sport. You don't want to be the only essentialist on your team, the only essentialist in your family, because you'll be weird. You don't want to be that guy over there. What's he doing? Why is he saying yes when everyone else is saying no? Why is he saying no when everyone else is saying yes? Why is he always saying we shouldn't be doing these things? Why is he saying, oh, priority is singular? You don't want to do that. You want everyone to be part of the conversation. And that's how this is going to happen. Now, I believe that there will be an essentialist community built. And I think it could be really significant, reaching many, many people. And really, essentialism in lots of ways has already gone beyond what I could have anticipated. But I see further now. And I think it can be really significant. But it begins, the whole thing is one by one, right? It is you finding a design partner, and once the podcast is over each week, you continue that conversation. You breathe life into it. It's like we were saying with a book. A podcast is not an entirely dead thing, but it requires the other side to continue the conversation and to get other people part of it. And amazing things will happen. And so that's what I want to see. And in the group of people that have already been part of what you're doing, the very nature of what they're trying to do, purpose, chasers, the very fact that they want to do business in the way you just described, means that they're already pre-selected for caring about these kinds of things. Well, this is a way that we can actually build something together that's really special. So that's my answer.
Greg, thank you so much for your time. And I really look forward to hearing about your book and getting my hands on your book. I did ask 2 questions in this interview, and he made it very clear that it wasn't being talked about at this point. I look forward to all of the work that you share with the world, as it's had such a great impact on me. And I just really want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Purpose Chasers podcast. If today's episode hit home, don't just listen, engage. Follow me on Spotify, drop a review, and join the conversation over on YouTube at The Purpose Chasers or on Instagram at Organic Nerdword. This is more than a podcast, it's a movement. And if you're here, you're already part of it. Remember, no amount of darkness can keep someone who's been called. So keep chasing, keep building, and keep standing in your purpose. I'm Mark Crandall, signing off until next time. Let's get it.